Hello, Lisa here, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to Self-Worth Saturday. In this week's chat and discussion, we are going to be talking about taking baby steps. So if you find that you have a tendency to bite off more than you can chew, or you're finding it difficult to make headway in your goals or in your personal growth path, then this video should be somewhat helpful to you. At least I hope so. But before we dive into all of that, just a quick recap. What you can expect in Self-Worth Saturday is a video just like this one, where I chat about the topic of the week, and then we also will have a live chat where me, my wife Peggy, and this community will have a discussion about the topic. We'll meander away from the topic probably, and then we'll meander back to the topic. So if you enjoy that sort of thing, and that sort of discussion, then do please hang out with us a little bit after this video is over and check that chat out. If you missed this when it's first going onto YouTube, not to worry, everything is replayable after the fact, and there's often some really great conversations that happen both during this video as it plays, because I'll have a chat available, and in the live chat afterwards. So, if you are new here and you love talking about self-worth, tarot, witchcraft, magic, all that good stuff, remember to hit the like button and subscribe and stick around so that you can be a part of this wonderful community that we are building here together. So, that being said, let's get on to this week's topic. Except I lied, because before we get onto this week's topic, I want to just quickly recap. Last week, we talked about self-care. What I asked us to do if you wanted to participate in the weekly challenge was to make a list of 20 self-care things that you could do and make sure that at least half of those things didn't cost a cent. So I made my list and I'm going to share it with you, and then the idea was to try to do a couple things off those lists over the past week. So here's what I came up with. Read fiction. Did that. Read or study hobby or nonfiction. So this is where my tarot books slot in, my astrology books slot in. I did some of that too. Take slow, deep breaths with longer exhales. Maybe, maybe not. Laugh. Lots of laughing last week. If y'all were with us in the chat last week, there was a lot of laughing. So you can probably all take that box off yourself. Bubble bath. Yep, did that. Say yes to a social invitation. Did that too. So I'm way over my 2. I'm good. Other things I have on the list. Say no to a social invitation. Cuddle the wifey. Did some of that. Journal or write. Did some of that. Go to bed early or take a nap. Did that too. Talk to a friend online or off. Did that. What else? Go for a walk. Buy myself a flower or flowers or a plant. Buy myself a present, take myself to dinner, take myself to lunch. What else is on here? Take myself to a movie. Book a spa service, oof, if only. Buy something special to eat or drink. Do something touristy. So I had, I believe, 13 things on my list that didn't cost anything, maybe 12, and the rest were things that I could spend money on if I wanted to. So, I'm curious, how did you guys do? Did you come up with 20 things you could put in your self-care toolkit? Did that number seem like incredibly high? Did it seem too low? Was it hard thinking of free things or hard thinking of things that cost money? Like, where did you land with this exercise? I would love to know. So if you are watching this back, comment down below. And if you're watching it while it's premiering for the first time, then definitely leave a comment in the live chat. I'm leaning over because my salt lamp is making my face so red. Either that or my face is just red. Let's find out. Probably just me. In any case, let's talk about taking baby steps. Baby steps. Let's have a beverage so that I don't talk too fast. Let's see if it works. You like my Little Pony sippy cup? Yeah, me too. So the thing about baby steps. So a lot of us have a tendency to take on too much. Baby steps is when we consciously back off of that urge to take on too much, or to do all of the things all at once, and we consciously take smaller bites out of our goals or out of the thing that we're working on. So I would like to use the example of taking on too much versus baby steps of depth year. So some of you may have seen my last What Depth Year video that I put up on my channel, and if not, I will link it in the cards just so you can take a look at it later if you'd like. But essentially, one of the things that Depth Year taught me was that I have a tendency to want to overcomplicate things and do too much or set too many goals all at once. There's a reason why I stopped doing the New Year's resolution thing. And depth year, for me anyways, was like New Year's resolutions, but amped up a lot. So what I found that I did with depth year was I set way too many categories of goals. I ended up putting a lot of pressure on myself to dive deeper into many things, which isn't really the point of depth year. So I'm curious if any of you guys have ever experienced that, where you get really excited about making progress on something or working towards a goal, and you end up taking on so much that you're overwhelmed and you kind of freeze almost, like you can't do anything because it's too much. That's why it's important to do baby steps. One of the things that makes it important for us to consider the idea of doing baby steps instead of trying to do everything all at once is that we want to make progress. And what I find happens when we overwhelm ourselves or we try to tackle something too big too fast is we just end up being really, really overwhelmed and we don't make any progress at all. So it's important to consider that if we want to make real tangible progress, whether that's in your personal growth path, whether that's in studying the tarot or starting a new movement, mindful movement routine or meditation practice or whatever it might be, whether it's a tangible thing that you're trying to accomplish, like, I don't know, I spaced. Whether it's a tangible thing you're trying to accomplish or whether it's something a little bit more like a routine that you want to build or a healthy habit you want to build, starting small makes it attainable in a way that starting too big just doesn't. So one of the things I wanted to mention is that we call them baby steps for a reason. So if you've ever been privy to, witnessed, or just heard a mom talk about the experience of the baby learning to walk, every little success is celebrated. And this is true of just babies in general. Like, we're really good about celebrating the successes of babies, and then we turn into adults and we're like, why aren't we accomplishing more? But with babies, it's like, oh, the baby rolled over, progress, yes. And then it's the baby sits up. I mean, I haven't had babies, but I mean, that's what I remember hearing. And then it's the baby stands up, like holding on to something. And then it's the baby starts to move the feet. And then it's like the baby takes the first step, and that's a huge deal. And then the baby takes multiple steps in a row without falling over, and that's a huge deal. Or at least until they fall over. And eventually the baby runs across the room to the other parent, or to the couch, or the toy, or the dog, or whatever. And the thing is that we're celebrating that every single step of the way. Pretty cool, right? So if we could do that for ourselves as adults, if we could celebrate those little tiny steps that move us in the direction of where we want to go, imagine how much better we would feel about ourselves in general, and also how much more progress we would probably make towards our goal. Because if the goal is, I'm going to stand up and run across the room when I've never taken a single step, you're probably going to fall down, like a lot. And then you're going to feel like you're failing, like a lot. And the reality is that the best motivator is success. I know this from working with yoga students. You teach a simple pose that everybody gets to feel successful doing, and then we're braver to try the next thing, and braver to try the next thing, because laddering your successes is so much more powerful than piling up your failures. So this is one of the reasons why baby steps is such an important thing to explore. So let's talk about what it might look like if you're taking on too much. And I'm sure all of us are like, oh yeah, yep, you don't even need to go down the list. I'm already there. But here's what it might look like. It might look like not having very good self-care. It might look like not having great boundaries. I'll make you another card. And by now, those of you who have been joining me for Self-Worth Saturday regularly know these are all topics that are intrinsically linked, and I'm going to continue to say it. We're going to be revisiting things like self-care, boundaries, personal sovereignty, all of these kinds of things, because they all tie together. Listening to our inner critic ties into taking on too much. Because when we take on too much and then we flop, our inner critic's like, see, I told you. And then it's harder to tie up our inner critic and stick him in the back seat. If you don't know what I'm talking about, see the video about being, our inner critic, letting our inner critic do the driving. It's there. So the thing is, if you're taking on too much, you're probably kind of sucking in the self-care and the boundaries department, to be completely honest. Another thing that can be a sign that you're taking on too much is that you're just not making progress. As I mentioned earlier, if you are taking baby steps, chances are you're seeing your successes and you're feeling yourself move forward towards your goal. If you're taking on too much, you have a tendency to feel stuck in one spot and like you're spinning your wheels. If you feel like you're constantly failing at the things you're trying to accomplish, there's a good chance you're expecting too much of yourself too quickly and you're taking on too much. And if you're working on too many things all at once, so you might be really good at taking baby steps, it's just that you're taking a baby step in this area and this area and this area and this area and this area. And this is a great point at which I should remind you that all of the things we've been talking about during Self-Care Saturday could by themselves be quite overwhelming if you try to do all of them all at once. If you have been laddering, I need to be better at boundaries, and I need to be better at accepting compliments, and I need to be better at, shutting up my inner critic, and I need to get better at... If you're piling all of that stuff on yourself all at once, you might be increasing the pressure on yourself even through this video series where we're exploring this stuff. I think it's important to remember that it's okay to take a step back and go, okay, this week I'm just gonna focus on this and just a little bit of this. It doesn't have to be a lot. Rant aside. I think the thing is that the reason that we take on so much instead of tackling things in smaller steps is, well, I'm going to give you a bunch of reasons because that's what I do in this, is I write them down and then I share them with you. But the first thing is self-sabotage. I might cue another video if I'm not out by now. The thing is, sometimes we're not ready to make change. And so taking on too much and overwhelming yourself, or seeing it as a bigger task than it is if you nibble at it in small bites as opposed to one big mouthful, can sometimes be a great internal unconscious excuse for not making any progress. Well, this is too big of a problem, like what am I even bothering for? So sometimes it's worth noticing if there's something you're avoiding by taking on so much that you're guaranteed to not make progress. Did anybody follow along with me on that? I hope that made sense. Sometimes what we do is we have a tendency to pressure ourselves to be perfect or better or the best right now. And that can be a reason why we're taking on too much instead of taking baby steps. If we are perfectionists, or if we were raised by perfectionists, or if we're just really hard on ourselves generally, we're much more likely to expect way more than what is actually reasonable in any area of our life. And so we're pressuring ourselves to take on too much. Sometimes it's even just a community pressure that's unintended. For example, I mentioned depth here at the beginning of this video. When people started talking about depth here, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go deep on this, 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 and suddenly I'm not going deep on very much at all. I had to pare myself all the way back and go, you know what, I'm really enjoying tarot. I'm going to focus on tarot and just let the rest be what it's going to be. And now I'm having fun with it. So something to consider. Another thing to consider is that sometimes what we're trying to do is get the hard part over with as quickly as possible so that we can get to the other side. This is a familiar feeling if you are one of those people, and a lot of us are, who doesn't like to be uncomfortable. Especially if you're doing something related to your personal growth, sometimes we bite off more than we can chew in an effort to get the work over with because it's uncomfortable to move through. Sometimes the stuff we're working on, say shadow work, or say learning to have better boundaries with family members, those kinds of things can be so uncomfortable that we try to just get it over with really fast, and then it becomes a way bigger, more difficult thing to do. So just be aware if you find yourself trying to move through something really, really fast as a way of getting it over with, because you're probably biting off way more than you can chew if that's what you're bringing to the table. And finally, this is a big one, and I've kind of mentioned it already, so this may be a wee bit of a duplicate, but sometimes it's avoidance and escapism. Sometimes the reason we're biting off so much and keeping ourselves so busy and taking on way too much is because there's something we're avoiding looking at. A good example of this is those of us who have struggled with work-life balance. Sometimes the reason we're taking on lots and lots and lots of extra work is because it's a wonderful distraction from the stuff in our personal life that we don't want to look at right now. Maybe we're not ready to look at it. Maybe we just are feeling uncomfortable about it. So we take on way too much and suddenly we, well, don't have the time. So it can be a way of escaping or avoiding the stuff that you kind of want to be working on, but are also nervous about working on. And it can become this bit of a double-edged sword. So here's the thing. Let's talk about how to start taking baby steps. It's a really, really simple formula, and it's kind of like math. Please don't run away screaming, but it is kind of like math. And here's how it works. You take whatever the one thing is, and this part is important because if you do this with 20 things all at once, you're still going to be overwhelmed. Pick one thing that you want to work on. Let's say you want to start a meditation practice, but let's say your ultimate goal is to have a daily meditation practice where you meditate for 30 minutes at a time every single day. So if you want to start really getting into this habit of practicing baby steps, then you need to break it down into the smallest bite-sized piece you possibly can. And I've mentioned this in our challenges and things before. The goal with this stuff is to set the goal so tiny that it's almost ridiculous if you don't do it. So, meditation. Your first baby step could be, okay, I'm going to pause once a day and take 3 deep breaths. And there's your meditation. And here's the trick. You don't just tomorrow take 3 deep breaths and then the next day you up the ante. No. You 3 deep breaths every day until that feels natural and comfortable and normal for you. And then you up the ante and you go, okay, now that I've got this 3 breath thing down, now I'm going to work on, I'm going to work on 10 breaths. And I'm going to do that until it feels completely natural. And this could be weeks. And then maybe you set a timer for 3 minutes or 1 minute. And you just keep stepping it up until you get where you want to get. Now here's the cool part. The really, really extra special, super golden surprise, like finding a golden ticket in a chocolate bar. Sorry, my brain just went Willy Wonka on me out of nowhere. But one of the cool things about doing this is that you might find that what you thought your goal was isn't really what you need. So you're doing this meditation thing. You get to the 5 minutes a day, every single day practice, and you're like, man, I feel amazing. I have lots of time. It's really easy to prioritize this practice. It's only 5 minutes, so I find that I'm always doing it no matter what. I think this is where I want to stay. I think 5 minutes every day is perfect for me. But you wouldn't have discovered that if you went for 15 minutes and then 30 minutes. You would have never even stepped into that space where you were enjoying a 5-minute meditation. And so sometimes what we're doing is robbing ourselves of this opportunity to enjoy something in our life or reach a milestone that maybe before we would have thought wasn't at all good enough, and we realize it's more than good enough. It's perfect. It's our like Goldilocks with the just right porridge and the just right like bed or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like not too hard, not too soft. It's just right. Wow, I am in all the childhood things. We've been to Goldilocks and Willy Wonka. I'm a little squirrely, can you tell? It is only like my 4th attempt at this video. It's fine. It's fine. This is fine. So the thing is, that's literally it. That's the trick. You just break it down into the smallest digestible chunk and move your way through those chunks at whatever pace feels comfortable. And the cool thing is that once you're where you want to be, or you feel like you're maintaining that particular thing really well, you have all of this breathing room, all of this energetic space to then tackle the next goal and break it down into its ridiculously tiny little piece and do that until it feels good. And then you get to work on the next thing. But if you were to try to do the meditation and eating 3 new vegetables every day and blah, 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 if you were to try to do all of these things all at once in your life, whether it's mental, emotional stuff like working on these self-worth things or personal growth, whether it's, you know, whatever it might be, One of the things Peggy did with me early in our relationship is she encouraged me to do a daily writing practice, but she said, look, 3 sentences a day. 3 sentences. Which I still sometimes, you know, am not great at. Just own my crap there. Because she's going to be in the chat and she's going to be like, hey, you haven't done 3 sentences in a while. My face is getting red already. But the thing is that if you are tackling things in small chunks, you can tackle things one at a time and make enormous progress in your life. And here's the other really amazing part. You're way more likely to succeed. I may have said this already, but I'm going to say it again if so. You're way more likely to succeed if you bite off digestible chunks. And the more you succeed, the more you're likely to continue growing and adding more and more growth to your life. Because successes are more motivating than failures. So, journal prompts. Here's the 3 prompts I have for you this week if you choose to explore this topic in writing. Prompt 1. Write down the last goal you feel like you failed at accomplishing. You feel. It could be a perceived failure. It doesn't have to be an actual failure. And just ask yourself if you felt like you took little enough steps or if you took big steps. And just explore how that might have played into your perceived failure. Number 2. Do the same exercise for the last time you felt like you succeeded at reaching a goal. And just explore that same idea. And finally, write down a few things that you'd like to see yourself make progress on. Before I pull our oracle card for the week, our challenge for this coming up week is to pick one thing you want to make progress on. So if you did journal prompt number 3, you'll have a few things to choose from. Pick one thing that you'd like to make progress on and break it down into laughably tiny pieces. Look at this dog. Is she not ridiculous? Laughably tiny pieces. The goal is to have it be so tiny and digestible that there's no way that you can't make the time for it or make some progress. That's the idea. So that you're setting yourself up for an easy win. And just see if you can take that first tiny, teeniest step this week. And then we'll chat about it next week and see how we did. So for this week's oracle card draw, we have, this is, oh, by the way, this is the Healers of the Earth Oracle by Mandy. Forget her last name. That was a fun noise. I am ridiculous today. Intensity. This is also me right now. Because my face is red again. Why? Intense feelings, sexual passion, and fervor. So I think what intensity is reminding us is that when we get excited about making growth on something, when we get excited about a goal or a new idea or something to pursue, like me, jumping on depth here, sometimes we can race ahead without pausing to realize that all we really need to do is walk. We don't need to power through at full speed. We can just stop, be more Knight of Pentacles instead of Knight of Swords, if you know what I mean. Just take that pause, carry our goal carefully. Look at how I roped the tarot in there. I'm feeling kind of proud of myself right now. But I think that's what intensity is telling us this week. Take those baby steps. Remember that you don't have to do all the things all at once. And remember that there is lots of time. And it's such a fulfilling thing. This is kind of something else to remember. It is such a fulfilling thing to be constantly working on yourself, to be constantly evolving and growing and transforming, and most importantly, to recognize that that journey is never finished. We're always evolving, and we're always given opportunities to grow. So there's no destination to reach. It's just a process and a practice. So with that, I'm going to close this out. We'll talk a whole lot more about this all in chat, I'm quite sure. But in any case, remember to repeat to yourself as often as possible, I am worthy and I am unafraid. Thanks for joining me for this week's Self-Worth Saturday, and I will see you all again very soon. Bye.